it was more fun to like point and laugh at Kevin McCarthy getting fired, but now that they've put someone in there,
now that they've replaced him with fucking Mephistopheles, like I don't. It's not as funny anymore.
Yep. All right, you got us, GOP. Now who's your real Speaker of the House? You tricked us. Good one.
yeah, but
he
seriously,
pulls off his face like the end of Scooby Doo, and up, it's I don't know, Bernie Sanders.
I mean, it doesn't have to be a rep, you know.
That's true. It can be anybody.
Yeah, it could be Bernie Sanders theoretically. But it's not. It is very it is very far from Bernie Sanders. It is someone who I'm pretty sure is a time traveler, because the only thing that I think can explain his fucking backwards ass view of the world is if he was born in like the 1500s.
Yep. Yeah, his outlook on life and the world is really strange. So the House of Representatives was without a speaker for like 3 weeks or so. And to catch you up on our last episode on this topic, Kevin McCarthy got fired by his own party. And then they had a hard time picking a speaker. There was no clear successor. They had Steve Scalise, but he had some health issues, and Republicans use that as an excuse to kind of disqualify him. Jim Jordan was too much of a nut job and too loud about it for this group of people. And then, a couple other people like threw their names into the ring, but ultimately, like kind of out of nowhere, this guy named Mike Johnson was elected speaker, who most of us have never fucking heard of, which I think was the main thing in his favor, as he was, getting to be elected speaker.
I mean, he is basically Jim Jordan without the baggage and more homophobia.
Yeah, it's a strange cocktail. It's actually exactly the right cocktail for this far right MAGA portion of the extreme party.
His own colleagues didn't know him. Like,
yes,
a reporter went up to Senator Susan Collins from Maine, which, to be fair, she's a senator, and the Senate is very different from the House of Representatives. But like, a reporter actually went up to her, and she basically straight up said, like, I don't know, I need to Google him.
Yeah, seriously. Like, I've heard multiple House members, granted Democrats, but multiple House members been like, I have no idea who this guy is, which is, I think it supports your time traveler thesis, because it's like he went back in time and like got, wrote down all this stuff about Mike Johnson, and then just showed up in the future and was like, I guess I'm elected.
And it actually explains the name too, because if you were trying to fit in to modern day society, I mean, you couldn't be, Barnabas Blumpkin or whatever names they had back in the 1500s. Like,
the inventor of the Blumpkin.
Sorry, that makes him sound cooler than he is. Anyway,
yeah, way cooler.
No, you would have to pick something like, okay, what is the most common fucking first name in the world? Mike? Okay, we'll go with that. What's the most common fucking last name in the world? Johnson? Okay, let's go with that.
Yeah, I just love how representative. I heard one commentator make this joke, but I'm going to steal it. I just love how like representative of the Republican white guy party all of their potential people have been. They had a Kevin, a Steve, a Jim, a Pete, and now a Mike.
I mean, if they threw a Chad in there, I'd have a bingo.
Yeah, exactly. Matt Gaetz is pretty much Chad.
Yeah, true.
Anyway, so on the 25th, they elected Mike Johnson. He is a House rep from the 4th Congressional District in Louisiana. He's been in the House since 2016, so surprising that no one knows who he is. And yeah, he's actually, for being pretty unknown, he's actually kind of somewhat of an important-ish guy. He's the vice chair of the House Republican Conference for the second time, or for 2 terms, and as a member of a couple like important committees, including the House Judiciary Committee and the House Armed Services Committee. And he chaired in the House Judiciary Committee, chaired the subcommittee of Constitution and Limited Government, if that tells you anything about his political leanings.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously it tells us that he's a fucking hypocrite because he's another person that preaches limited government while being extremely authoritarian.
It's really quite remarkable how, that doesn't seem to faze these people at all. So let's talk a little bit about, like who this guy is now that he's the Speaker of the House, second in line to the presidency after Kamala Harris.
One thing that makes no sense to me is that, so part of the reason why Jim Jordan was not palatable to a lot of the more moderate Republicans, the ones that were in more purple districts, was his role in trying to overturn democracy and, destroy America.
Yep.
But Johnson is just as guilty of that.
Seriously.
He actually,
if not more,
if not more so, if not more insidiously guilty of that, because one of the strategies that he actually helped spearhead in terms of trying to get the 2020 election overturned was, you all might remember us talking about this specific argument, which was that trying to do a lawsuit against swing states that had changed their electoral procedures to account for the COVID pandemic in order to basically throw the results of the elections within those states out, like make them contested to the point where no one would get a majority. And if something like that were to happen, then what would happen is the House of Representatives would basically hold a vote where the delegations from each state would get one vote for president, and Republicans control more delegations than Democrats do, which means that it would have it would have gone to Trump.
Yep.
Which would have overturned the election.
Yeah.
Like it's less of a let's fight against voter fraud strategy, because that's never going to fucking work. And it's more of a, here is an insidious strategy based on a loophole within a loophole outside of a loophole in order to make sure that democracy no longer matters.
Yes, seriously. Yeah, the New York Times in an article last year called Johnson, quote, the most important architect of the Electoral College objections for the January 6th attempt to throw out the election. And I think, there are a couple themes about Johnson that we'll call out. One is his anonymity, which I think works to his advantage. To your point, Nathan, Jim Jordan played a significant role in Jan 6, and that's the reason why he wasn't palatable to most of the members of the House. But because no one knows who this guy is, and his was a little bit more complicated, and it's just harder to convince people that a person that they've never heard of is bad, he gets to fly under the radar. So that's one theme. A second theme is what the other thing you called out, Nathan, which is this guy is smart. And that's bad. Whereas Kevin McCarthy was sleazy and Jim Jordan is a true believer, loud fuckwad, like Johnson is policy-oriented, true believer conservative who is a little bit boring and is, like, of the people who are considered for the speakership, he actually has sponsored the most bills that have become law. So he's like, his success rate for sponsored bills is like 6.5%, which, like, just is an indicator that this dude, who is a former attorney, who's worked on constitutional law for a long time, like that's his background, risks being really effective at implementing the horrible policies that he advocates for.
Yeah. And a huge aspect of his ideology is he is disgustingly, horrifically anti-gay.
Yeah, seriously.
And he has a long history of being disgustingly and horrifically anti-gay. Before he was a House rep, he was a lawyer. And so he was a part of this conservative organization called the Alliance Defense Fund, which is a socially conservative legal advocacy group. and they actually eventually changed their name to the Alliance Defending Freedom, and they collaborated with this other organization called Exodus. Exodus was this organization that was founded in 1978, which was considered an international leader in the ex-gay movement, and one of its biggest pushes was the practice of conversion therapy, specifically conversion therapy on children. And in fact, the group actually shut down in 2013, and its original founder actually posted a public apology for it. For what his organization had caused, for, quote, the pain and hurt that was caused by the organization. And this was after all of the fucking evidence came out about how gay conversion therapy is complete pseudoscience, and the UN even classifies it as a version of torture. This motherfucker represented a group that represented defending these people's rights to torture children in court. Now, you might argue like, oh, well, but he was just a lawyer defending them, and everybody deserves to have a lawyer defending them. That doesn't necessarily mean he believes in that ideology. Except, going back and reading some of the weird shit that he said about the gay community, it's just silly. Like, I shit you not, he blames homosexuality for the fall of the Roman Empire. In 2008, he told a radio host, quote, "Some credit to the fall of Rome to not only the depredation of society and the loss of morals, but also the rampant homosexual behavior that was condoned by the society." So I just like to point out a few things. First off, the Roman Empire lasted for 1,000 fucking years, which is a lot longer than the United States has lasted, and a lot longer than most civilizations throughout history has ever lasted. And during the entire time, gay relationships were actually fairly common. And in fact, towards the end of the Roman Empire was when they started to embrace Christianity and started being against things like homosexuality, like gay relationships. So it sounds to me like the loss of gay relationships was actually responsible for it.
Yeah.
Or
you know how
maybe
you maintain a really strong fighting force of virile men? Yeah. You gotta love your brother. It's there. It's right there.
Yeah, it was, interestingly enough, around the time that that Roman Emperor Constantine embraced Christianity and converted on his deathbed, was around the time that the Roman Empire fell. Interesting.
Wow.
It seems to me like that's what did it.
So we think he's time traveled from the time of Rome to collapse the United States with anti-LGBTQ.
Maybe I think
rhetoric.
that's it. I think that's
Could
it.
be it.
Or maybe it was the fact that the Roman Empire just kind of kept pissing off a bunch of Germanic tribes by trying to take their land, and the Germanic tribes were like, you know what? Fuck you. We're gonna go fuck you all up. Maybe that was it.
If
Maybe
you guys don't know
this...
about Nathan's high horse about Germanic tribes and the power of the Celts and stuff like that, like this is a hill he will die on.
You're goddamn right.
Okay,
And on top of that, there was also a slew of really terrible Roman emperors that were like corrupt and horrible and authoritarian, which, you know, another lesson that apparently Mike Johnson can't learn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, his LGBTQ record is really horrible. Like in 2022, he authored legislation which has been dubbed the federal version of Florida's like "Don't Say Gay" bill, which prohibits the use of federal funds to develop, implement, facilitate, or fund any sexuality-oriented program, event, or literature for children under the age of 10. So that means that like you can't teach them about gender affirming care, LGBTQ people, or so it has all of the like weaknesses of the "Don't Say Gay" bill in that it like has the potential to chill our ability to just allow LGBTQ people to live and work and be themselves in society. Johnson also co-sponsored legislation with Marjorie Taylor Greene, Marjorie Taylor drew a space laser screen called the Protect Children's Innocence Act, which would make it a crime to provide gender-affirming care to people under the age of 18. And if you're curious about that, we've talked about that on a few different episodes. You should be saving people's lives by providing gender-affirming care to those who need it. That's just pretty clearly the case. He's also written calling homosexuality inherently unnatural. He said, quote, "Your race, creed, and sex are what you are, while homosexuality and cross-dressing are things you do. This is a free country, but you don't have special protections for every person's bizarre choices," is his perspective. He also defended Louisiana's same-sex marriage ban before the Supreme Court in 2004 and 2014. So this dude has a pretty long history, like a 2 decades long history of public action against the LGBT community.
Look, this is who the Republican Party still is. Now, I do want to be very clear. That doesn't mean that all Republican voters are like this.
Sure.
And in fact, a lot of polls that I've seen recently have actually shown that a majority of Republican voters actually do support same-sex marriage. So I just want to be clear. When I say the Republican Party, I'm referring to elected Republicans. I'm not referring to like Republican voters. But this is who the Republican Party is. And I just want to make it clear that if you're still supporting elected Republicans, like, you are still supporting bigots. You are still supporting out and out bigots.
Yeah.
That are, that are fighting actively to try to take rights away from people, while at the same time taking tons of money from corporations in order to give them, to give them an easier time.
Yeah, which Mike's record is also terrible on that front, on the corporate corruption.
I'm shocked.
I know. You must be really shocked.
No, it's interesting because he was asked in an interview like about his ideology, and one of the things he said was, well, the best thing that you can do to figure out what to learn about my ideology is to open up a Bible.
Yeah.
To which Colbert actually did a segment about that, and he made a point that I'm going to reiterate, which is basically that, okay, but the Bible talks about feeding the poor and, taking money from the rich to give it to the poor. Are you for that? Is he for that, Michael?
If what you mean by taking money from the rich is that you get paid by rich people and corporations, then yeah, I guess that's right.
No, God damn it. It's like he read the first paragraph and was like, take money from the rich. Perfect. Got it. I'm on it.
No problemo. Yeah. So he is a science skeptic, science skeptic for sure, but also a climate science skeptic. And he has accepted more campaign contributions in his congressional career from oil and gas industry than any other industries, and has repeatedly downplayed that climate change is an issue, which again is another one of those issues that's like, dude, we all agree this is a losing issue. Like polls continually show that people think that the climate crisis is a crisis, and yet he's just still holding on to these absolutely like absurd 90s Republican extremist talking points.
I mean, hell, anti-climate change is not even 90s Republican.
That's true.
Even back then, a lot of 90s Republicans were, hell, John McCain was ran on a platform of, trying to do something about climate change.
John McCain, our old progressive friend. Yeah. He also thinks that mass shootings are caused by teaching evolution, which is strange. Oh,
yeah. Really?
Yeah.
So
apparently,
so why don't they happen? Why don't they happen literally anywhere else that teaches evolution?
Oh, Nathan, that's a very good point.
I'm just saying, France is secular to, I would actually say secular to a fault in some ways. And I mean that as they're so secular that they do sometimes violate religious freedom, and I'm not cool with that, but they don't have mass shootings. So if the argument is, take God out of schools and that leads to mass shootings, then why haven't those happened in France or other countries that do have very secular governments and approaches to education?
Made an argument that takes evolution leading to mass shootings too seriously. But
this guy's the fucking speaker, which
know.
means that unfortunately, the shit that he says, we have to take seriously and actually analyze it and actually argue against it, because he has actual power. He is second in line to be the fucking president of the United States.
Yes, it's fucking crazy. So he's also a big advocate for not just, limitations of LGBTQ marriages, but also all marriages. So he's a big advocate for something called covenant marriage, which I thought was like a myth, kind of, but apparently it's becoming this like talking point in the conservative right, which is basically where you eliminate no fault divorce from a marriage. So there are certain states that have specific marriage types called covenant marriages, and they don't allow for no fault divorce to end the marriage. You have to have like fault involved. So it makes it, harder for people to escape domestic abuse situations, and also for people to live happy, good lives that they like. So fuck
You know
that
what
guy.
happened when no-fault divorces became uniform throughout the country? Spousal murder rates plummeted.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus.
Yeah, it's crazy.
On top of that, he has, in the actual halls of the House of Representatives, he has openly argued against the idea that the founding fathers in any way believed in a separation of church and state.
They wrote it down.
They wrote it down. He said, like, his argument, and it's this talking point that we've seen a lot, and I just want to go ahead and put this to rest for a second. He says that, like, oh yeah, when Thomas Jefferson talked about a wall of separation between church and state, that was a one-way wall. Because Michael, you know how one-way walls work. When you put up a wall, like there's this magical generator that you put on it that if you go one way, you can just walk right through it. But if you try to go the other way, then just boom, because that's how walls work.
Yeah, totally. They imagined these phasing walls back, and we have this extensive historical record of the 1770s when they were imagining these walls where you could just walk through one way but not the other, like revolving doors, which weren't invented until like the 1800s or.
Yeah. But like his argument is, Thomas Jefferson wasn't saying that you couldn't bring your religion into the government. It's just that the government couldn't impose on your religion, which again, that argument falls apart on its face, because the moment your religion is in the government, by necessity, that religion, if it is being used to make laws, is violating the religious freedom of other people that do not follow your religion. And on top of that, let's see what Thomas Jefferson actually said. All right, let's look at some actual clarifications. In a letter from Thomas Jefferson to Jeremiah Moore in 1800, he said, quote, "The clergy, by getting themselves established by law, engrafted into the machine of government, have been a very formidable engine against the civil and religious rights of man."
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, bro. Yes, when Thomas Jefferson said separation of church and state, he meant separation of church and state.
Yeah,
he meant that your religion, your religious values do not get to impose on the laws of everybody. That's what he meant. He clarified that 1,000 times. It's not just one letter that he wrote. It took me 2 minutes to find this.
Also, it's right in the fucking text of the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. He's right about the prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Yeah, sure. But it's not like they said Congress shall not establish a religion. It's not like they said Congress shall not make an official religion. No, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Like, they're not even allowed to make laws that broach that are adjacent to the establishment of religion. This could not be a clearer, solid wall between religion and government.
Yeah, and this guy who is now second in line to be the president of the United States, is too conservative for Thomas Jefferson.
Yep. Yeah, dude, this is bad. Yeah, he has a spotless voting history of voting against any kind of protection or legalization of abortion. He's earned a A+ rating from the Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America, organization. Yeah, and he has fought to shut down abortion clinics in Louisiana when he was located there. And yeah, overall, he's achieved some incredible results, honestly. A 92% rating from the American Conservative Union and a 90% rating from the Heritage Action, which is an activist group for conservative values. So pretty amazing. He's got like A- grades from these incredibly conservative organizations. He's a real fucking crusader.
Yeah. Basically, the best we can hope from this guy is that he will be ineffective.
Yeah, that's my worry. So like that's the best we can hope, but like that's not his track record. His track record is somewhat effective. And like I think this is something I think this is interestingly illustrative. So he was he voted along with lawmakers to discourage the state's law enforcement and government agencies from working with the Council on American Islamic Relations, which is a Muslim civil rights organization. And he said that the effort wasn't aimed against, quote, people who believe in the Islamic faith, but simply was about opposing terrorism. All of us here are opposed to terrorism, he said. That's all this is about. It's like that smile to your face and then stab you in the back perspective that is like, along with his record of kind of being effective, that makes me particularly worried about this guy. He seems like he's not Marjorie Taylor Greene. He's not Matt Gaetz. He's not Jim Jordan. He's not fucking these crazy above the radar loud people that will that are there to rail and yell and like try to start a movement. He's there to fucking change the laws.
Yeah. He is their ideology, but with a polite smile.